Good morning, everyone. Next item is item number 7, public hearing to consider authorizing the Director of Community Development to send a letter to the California Coastal Commission staff identifying the county's concerns and requests on the Mid-Coast Update Local Coastal Program amendments. Mr. Monowitz, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. President, Honorable Supervisors, and Executive Staff. Steve Monowitz, Long Range Planning Services Manager for the Planning and Building Department. As you know, the purpose of today's hearing is to determine how the county is going to respond to the Coastal Commission's staff's recommendation on a set of county-approved amendments known as the Mid-Coast Update. This is a follow-up to the June 16th study session where county staff described the most significant issues raised by the Commission staff recommendation and outlined a preliminary response. For today's hearing, staff is recommending that the board reconvene the public hearing that began on June 16th and then vote to authorize the Community Development Director to send a letter to the Commission staff on behalf of the Board of Supervisors that identifies the county's concerns and requests specific changes to their recommendations. This letter will include all of the issues and requests described in the information that was presented to the board at the June 16th study session, which have been compiled into the staff report that was prepared for today's hearing. Since these are the same issues and requests presented to the board on June 16th, my presentation this morning will just briefly respond to the questions raised by the board at that study session. I will then be available to answer any additional questions you may have or provide any additional details you may be interested in. One of the follow-up items requested by the board as well as other speakers on June 16th was an analysis of the impact that the Witt and Abernathy decisions will have on the build-out estimates contained in the update. County Council has prepared a supplemental regarding this issue, which has been distributed to the board. And this memo concludes that the Witt and Abernathy decisions will not have a material impact on the theoretical maximum build-out estimate contained in the update, and that's due to the assumptions that were applied to that estimate. These decisions will, however, likely reduce actual build-out that can be realized on the Mid-Coast and extend the time frame to reach that build-out. This is particularly true if the Coastal Commission staff's proposed lot retirement program is implemented. The primary reason that the Witt and Abernathy decisions will likely reduce build-out is that they will, in many instances, require subdivisions to legalize existing land holdings. Because the determination of the need for a subdivision depends on the specific circumstances of each particular case, and the results of the subdivision review process cannot be predicted, it's not possible at this point in time to quantify the reduction in actual build-out that will result from these decisions. But it's safe to say that it will be reduced in comparison to the pre-existing situation. The board also requested staff to look into the types of special districts currently under consideration in the Mid-Coast that would be impacted by the Commission staff's proposed limitations on special district formation and expansions. What we found is that in addition to creating an impediment to the irrigation district that is of interest to the Farm Bureau, that the Commission staff's proposed policy could also interfere with implementation of LAFCO's recommendation to consolidate existing sewer and water service districts and to form a special district to provide park and recreation facilities. And I note that a letter from the LAFCO executive director has been distributed to the board this morning regarding this impact. Finally, the board asked about the necessity of taking action at today's hearing. Action today is needed to provide the Commission staff with time to consider the county's response prior to releasing its staff report for the August Coastal Commission hearing. If more time is needed, the county can request that the Commission staff postpone the August hearing and reschedule it for the next Commission meeting to be conducted in the region, which will be December in San Francisco. And that concludes my staff presentation. I'd be happy to answer questions. I'd also like to note that Charles Lester, Deputy Director of the Coastal Commission staff, is here today if you have questions for him. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Are there any questions at this point? Okay, we do have a number of speakers. I am going to call on Mr. Lester first, though, and then to be followed by Claude Wendell and Paul Perkovic.
Good morning, Mr. President, Honorable Supervisors, Charles Lester, California Coastal Commission.
Good morning.
I'm happy to be here again and was happy to be at the hearing in Half Moon Bay to provide any assistance and answers about the staff recommendation concerning the Midcoast update. As you heard, we do continue to work as best we can under the circumstances, particularly given our state budget situation right now, continuing to work with your staff to respond to concerns that you may have, to reach as much agreement as possible on the recommendations prior to our Commission's hearing in August. That's consistent with these best efforts that we've made over the last few years, including sending a number of letters to you as you were considering and deliberating on the recommendations of your staff to adopt the Midcoast update. As you heard in Half Moon Bay, I think we are in agreement in a half or more of the modifications that we've recommended to date. We've also continued to work with your staff, particularly on water quality and some of the recommendations that have been highlighted in your staff's recommendation. So, for example, I anticipate that we will be able to reach agreement on the water quality sections of the LCP prior to our hearing. We're also open to modifications and clarifications to our recommendation that would do such things as change the rate growth from a percentage to a number to facilitate implementation. The special district policy that was just mentioned, we anticipate being able to make some changes there to more conform more directly to the Coastal Act language, which essentially is a concern for that special districts not be formed if they would result in growth-inducing development inconsistent with the LCP. So that would be a more, I think, more compatible with some of the concerns that have been raised. So we're going to continue to work over the next few months on the next month on these questions, and hopefully your staff will be able to work with us in some of those areas where there's maybe some middle ground. There are some recommendations where I don't anticipate that we're going to be able to reach agreement. For example, on the recommendation concerning conflict resolution, the county has proposed a policy to allow what some people call balancing within the LCP. For us, that's a particularly legal issue. And let me just move to one other point since I see my time is up here.
Mr. Lester, since you are very much involved in this process, I want you to take the time that you need to respond to the recommendation from staff.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Well, with respect to the conflict resolution, that's a particularly legal question for the Coastal Commission. It's a statewide concern. The advice that we have from our legal division is that we cannot do the sort of policy change that's being proposed by the county. So that's an area where we're going to have to continue to talk and perhaps reach agreement pursuant to further discussions after the commission action. There are other questions that we're going to continue to talk about, but I wanted to underscore one in particular, which is the growth management question and the question of adequacy of public services. Our recommendation, of course, has a 1% growth rate recommended for the foreseeable future until certain benchmarks are accomplished. I'm happy to see that I think we're in general agreement on the notion of the benchmarks, in particular the need for more transportation planning, comprehensive transportation planning on the mid-coast. Everyone's familiar with that problem. It's a significant issue, has been a significant issue, and we need to do that kind of planning. Our perspective is that we need the planning space to do that transportation management and a slower growth rate at 1%, which is what your Planning Commission recommended also, would be a more prudent way to proceed given the significant constraint in traffic. We're also concerned about water supply issues. I know the CCWD, while they have existing connections out there in the marketplace, there's also concern with climate change and drought and the ability to meet existing connections with adequate capacity. So we do believe that a slower rate at this time would be more prudent given those constraints. and I hope that you can consider that. So I wanted to underscore that recommendation, and I'm available here for questions if you want to talk about anything in particular or that I might clarify. But I thank you for your time and have appreciated working with your staff as well.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any questions at this point? Okay, thank you, Mr. Lester, appreciate it. Then we are moving into the public hearing phase, and I'm asking speakers to limit their remarks to 2 minutes each. The first speaker will be Claude Wendell, followed by Paul Perkovic.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Claude Wendell. I'm a resident of the Coast Side for the last 32 years. I'm also a real estate agent over there. And what prompted me to come here this morning was a call I received from a past client. There's 2 points I want to make, and the big concern seems to be growth on the coast. And I think we have enough natural impediments currently that not to be too concerned about that. And secondly, the impact that some of the things that have been suggested, I believe, by the Coastal Commission in regards to water and septic systems. Currently, there are 3 sewer districts on the coast. There are 2 water companies, neither of which are selling water connections. There's, in the case of Half Moon Bay and El Granada, you can get water connections on the gray market, is what I call it. And in Moss Beach, Montera, you have the option of drilling a well, which it's been suggested to be taken away. And the point I would make is that when I get a phone call, and I'll tell you one thing, as a real estate agent, less than 10%, maybe less than 5% of the business I do is selling lots, because the conversation I have with people is, do you really want to do this? I've lived there 32 years. We've got infill lots everywhere, and these impediments I just described, I think you're probably aware of, Mr. Gordon, since you come over there quite a bit. But the call I got was from a gentleman who I sold a lot to. He paid $300,000 for a lot. There is no way to get water to that lot. There's a well on it that was drilled and done according to the current regulations, which I think pretty much protect the aquifer, and as was the septic systems. I don't know of any. I've been there 30 years. I've been doing this, and I don't know of any real problems that would preclude or that would suggest that we have to change those regulations at this current time. I think the system works pretty well on a case-by-case basis to determine whether that parcel can support a well or a septic system. But making the second point, if we blanket just stop wells and septic systems, you would literally, in my mind, and I'm not an attorney, I know there's one in the room, you would be taking that person's property away from them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wendell. Next speaker is Paul Perkovic, followed by Tim Fromm, followed by Lindell Erb.
Good morning, President Birch and members of the board and staff. My name is Paul Perkovic. I live in Montera, and I'm president of the board of the Montera Water and Sanitary District. You should have received a copy of a letter that was sent on behalf of the district that addresses a number of issues where the Coastal Commission has suggested some modifications. Members of our board and our district have worked with county planning, George Bergman, the Planning Commission over the last 10 years very extensively on the local coastal program update, and we're generally pleased with the progress that's been made. You will note from our letter that we support the county analysis in some areas and urge your board to go forward in those areas. In other areas, we think the Coastal Commission staff has raised some important issues, and their suggested modifications should be supported by your board. There are 2 issues that I'd like to talk about. Our district acquired the local water system 6 years ago. In the past 6 years, we have made very extensive progress in securing long-term assured access to adequate and reliable supplies of water to serve the Montera Moss Beach community. A couple of those items have not yet reached final resolution. And we are not willing to make long-term commitments to property owners in our district to deliver water to them for the indefinite future until we have assurance that we have adequate water supplies to meet those commitments. The same should apply to the county. The county has permitted over 1,000 wells in the Mid-Coast area, at about 50 units a year, which is a build-out since the LCP was certified, and since the mid-'80s, when the board adopted Resolution 53059, allowing wells on a temporary basis until an adequate water supply has been developed, that accounts for nearly those 1,000 wells. So the county has been allowing development on an aquifer that has not had its yield adequately studied. And therefore, we support the Coastal Commission's recommendation that new wells be continued to be permitted, but only after the completion of a groundwater management plan. Please understand, this is not a prohibition. And if I may, I would like to make one further suggestion
Time
to
is
the
up.
board. May I make one further suggestion?
Yes, wrap it up.
Which is, procedurally, you may choose to have the Coastal Commission at least have the hearing in August, even if you've not resolved all the issues, because the commission may make certain recommendations to their staff that could be studied to come back for a later hearing.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Tim Fromm, followed by Lindell Erb, followed by David Dixon.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Tim Fromm, San Mateo County Farm Bureau. I'm here pitch hitting for Jack Olson today. I'm really delighted and proud to be working with the family farmer sustainable agricultural footprint we have in San Mateo County. Recently we had a strategic planning session with the Farm Bureau Board, and water was right at the top of the list, both as opportunities and threats. Farmers need a reliable, sustainable source of irrigation water, and unlike the rest of the state, just about a preponderance of the state, where farmers can just turn a valve and have water delivered directly to them, in San Mateo County, it's difficult. It's an individual onus of the farmer to figure out how to get his reliable source. Farmers have evolved their systems through the years in response to a variety of things like change in precipitation patterns and resource agency concerns, evolving from in-stream ponds to off-stream ponds, and in some cases deep wells in lieu of direct diversion. Some of the Farm Bureau efforts, which continue to evolve in our thinking in our process, may be impacted by some language within the local coastal plan. As Jack described to you in Half Moon Bay, Farm Bureau and farmers have been very supportive of the concept of a recycle water project whose hub would be Sewer Authority Midcoast. Our vision is that that water would be delivered to field irrigators, most of which are outside the jurisdictional footprint of Sewer Authority Midcoast or Coast County Water District. Thus the idea of a special district, an irrigation district, which would serve the irrigators outside of those jurisdictional footprints. It has advantages. It takes the growth issue away, and it attracts interesting new partners of the federal government whom haven't actually been here before, such as potentially the Bureau of Reclamation. We believe that if there is language in the LCP which states things like no new special districts or no new wells or restricts recycled water usage, that would reduce our flexibility to evolve into a more sustainable agricultural footprint. We appreciate the staff and the Commission's response to our irrigation district idea, and we hope that the conversation continues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lindell Erb, followed by David Dixon, followed by Lenny Roberts.
Yes, good morning. I'm Lyndall Erb. I'm chair of ETRAC, the Equestrian Trail Riders Action Committee, and vice president of the Coastside Horse Council. And I just wanted to state a couple of things. One, that we support the continuation of the open space for the bypass from Devil's Slide through Montera. That's an important trail for us. And also, I would like to mention that there are a great number of us who own horses on the coast, and the water concerns for us as animal owners is really significant, and many of us are paying huge amounts. I mean, our horses drink up to 15 gallons a day, and that's a lot of water that we are using that is costing us a lot. And, you know, if we are unable to put in wells and unable to supplement this water somehow, I mean, we are really in a spot where we are, you know, I think it's an important issue that hasn't been considered, is the number of animals that are on the coast. Not just the horses. I mean, there are other agricultural animals out there, goats, llamas, and these things need water, and it's not really being provided in an agricultural sense right now. We're paying for residential use of water to feed our animals. So that's my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. David Dixon, followed by Lenny Roberts, followed by Terry Gossett.
Good morning. I'm David Dixon, General Manager of Coastside County Water District. Water's a favorite topic here. We appreciate the work of the County and Coastal Commission staff in working through this LCP update. We're 8 years into the process now, and it doesn't seem like we've resolved a number of important issues. Coastside County Water District's a water utility, not a planning agency. It's not up to us to determine whether there'll be one more house or 2,000 more houses on the coast side. But whatever is decided, it's our job to provide both our existing and future customers with an adequate, safe, and reliable supply of water. And as we look at the suggested modifications to the local coastal plan update and at the county's response, we're concerned that the projects that we'll need to do, the water supply and infrastructure expansion projects, will be subjected to a lot of criteria that frankly we can't understand. And we think those need to be, those differences need to be resolved. We're going to need to do water supply projects if there are no more houses built on the coast side. Climate change, the possibility of drought, the diminishment of local supplies due to environmental and other concerns, those are all things that will require us to do water supply projects. And we would like to see the provisions of the LCP clarified in a way that allows those projects to go forward. And we look forward to working with the staff of the Coastal Commission and the county to try to achieve that. Finally, one specific comment. We would like to see restrictions on the use of recycled water lifted. We don't think recycled water is growth-inducing, and we look forward to bringing that resource to the coast side. Thank you.
Thank you. Lenny Roberts, followed by Terry Gossett, followed by David Byers.
Morning, Mr. President, members of the board. I'm Lenny Roberts. I'm speaking for Committee for Green Foothills. I didn't get a chance to finish commenting on my written comments in Half Moon Bay, so I wanted to just highlight one point that I made in our letter concerning the prohibition of wells and septic systems in the urban area. As you know, this is a concern that we've had for many, many years, allowing especially drinking water wells in the urban area where there's, as we know, limited water supply from the underground aquifer, and in some parts of the mid-coast there is not adequate water for even any of the existing wells. So the other issue about that is that as people are drilling their individual private wells, they are not helping support the public water system. So we have the remaining customers having to bear an undue burden of support for the public districts. The other comment I wanted to make was on the conflict resolution provision that the county has submitted, and I wanted to underscore the points that Charles Lester made this morning about the fact that this is a policy in the Coastal Act that is available to the Coastal Commission in trying to balance conflicting policies in the Coastal Act. It's not available for local governments to do that. As the Commission considers an LCP amendment or considers a permit, it might need to apply this policy, but it is not. It's not a matter that the county could be doing itself. So I just wanted to urge you to delete your requested policy. It's suggested modification number 5 of the Coastal Act. Coastal Commission says addresses that. Thank you.
Thank you. Terry Gossett, followed by David Byers, followed by Jet Peck.
Good morning, Honorable Supervisors and staff. My name is Terry Gossett from Moss Beach, and I'm here speaking on behalf of Californians for Property Rights. I provided an email to each of the supervisors and to the planning staff this weekend, and basically it was 3 different memos that we've written over the last 5 years. And if I summarize just the main points to the ones that I sent to the supervisors, you last March of 2005, we made 3 points. We were recommending a compromise on the growth rate for the Mid-Coast of 52 units per year. We still think that's reasonable. Our second issue dealt with the boundaries of both GSD and Montara Water and Sanitary District. We feel that the law is pretty specific, that the service area, the electoral level area, and the tax rate area should be coterminous. And we still think that should be reviewed and make sure that that applies. Our other recommendation had to do with the Montara treatment plant. And since that's located right between the lighthouse and Fitzgerald Marine Reserve, we recommended that that become a public recreation area. It would serve the community. As I said in the meeting on the 16th, we have very big concerns, as others in the room here today, on prohibition of private wells. That would be an extreme hardship, and if it were ever done, it ought to be on an extremely short-term basis. I'm not a lawyer, so I'll leave that up to the lawyers. The other point I made on June 16th had to do with full participation in accord with the Coastal Act for the public, and in particular the service areas. You've been extremely outstanding in your staff over the last 10 years in providing that. I would just hope that you continue, and there's no need to rush to judgment. One parting comment has to do back with the private wells, and that is, I don't even know where to start. If the public water was provided, then we wouldn't have the 1,000 wells that people are complaining about. So we could induce the Montara Water to provide water. That would help us all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. David Byers, followed by Jeff Peck, followed by Sean Trainer.
Good morning, President, church members of the board. Dave Byers on behalf of the Big Wave Project. 4 brief comments. First of all, the utility and growth limitations imposed by the Coastal Commission staff. Can anybody here say Beechwood? I mean, I'm just really astonished that today, when we have local agencies funding bond issues, when we have a $26 billion deficit at the state level, people still think it's business as usual. We can't have a regulatory scheme that's going to promote these kind of catastrophic events as what happened in Half Moon Bay. That's what the Coastal Commission staff proposals would do. Number 2, affordable housing. Big Wave LLC has 70 units of affordable housing. Coastal Commission staff's recommendations would prevent that from being built. There's 3 affordable housing sites on the county right now, on the coast side. None of them have been built. None of them have been built in 30 years. Now to have an additional regulatory scheme to prevent 70 units being built for disabled people, it's ridiculous. Number 3, the Big Wave LLC is the greenest project that's ever been promoted in the county of San Mateo. And to ignore progressive efforts to deal with water and sanitary service by unduly imposing restrictions is to prevent that sort of development to be built. Well, what do we do with all this? Very simple. I think it's ludicrous, after all the public hearings that we had, after all the staff input that we had, to say this is all going to be resolved by August. I think the more logical thing to do, give Coastal Commission staff an opportunity to work with county staff, but the public hearing before the Coastal Commission should occur in December. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jeff Peck, followed by Sean Trainer, followed by April Vargas.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Board and staff. I think that everything you've done in the last 6 years for the LCP was the proper thing to do. I think your response to the California Coastal Commission's amendments was a proper response. There's one thing I'm really concerned about, and that is the Commission's restriction on affordable housing. We need affordable housing, and to not allow exemptions to affordable housing except for HUD-financed projects is ridiculous. Affordable housing is good no matter who pays for it, and I urge you to please disregard that amendment change and keep exemptions in there for affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean Trainer, followed by April Vargas, followed by Ann Carey.
I'd like to thank the board for letting me say my piece up here. I'm just a little old lot owner in Montera who had bought a lot that was to the codes of the day is a buildable lot, but the changes that are up right now would basically make my lot unbuildable, which would, from a selfish aspect, basically take everything I've worked my entire life for to this point and throw it out the window. And although I do think there should be some considerations, it's definitely a point that could be looked at, but I feel that rushing to judgment, especially on this matter, is going to affect a tremendous amount of people in many different ways, such as myself, as just a small lot owner trying to make a home for his family. And that's pretty much all I have to say. I thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. April Vargas, Ann Carey, followed by Susan Gretchell Wallace.
Good morning, President Church and members of the board. In my brief time, I just want to talk about two issues. Regarding the growth rate, as Director Lester said, a slower pace is more prudent, particularly in these times when we're seeing that traffic is only getting worse and that we do need time to figure out a plan, which is my second part of my comments about the need for some kind of a comprehensive traffic management plan and study. As you referenced in this report, there was an extensive 3-day workshop a couple weeks ago talking about trails in the Mid-Coast and what we're looking at for the future. There are many compelling presentations about the fact that transportation experts now in this country and certainly worldwide have realized that we can no longer build our way out of traffic congestion for single occupancy vehicles. So we really need to be thinking about other ways to move people. As part of that workshop, there was unanimous, or I wouldn't say unanimous, but the majority of people who expressed an opinion were very much in favor of the multimodal parallel trail along Highway 1 for bicycles and pedestrians to alleviate delays for people who live in those communities who want to get from point A to point B during instances of incredible traffic. So that, to me, and to many others, points out the fact that we need a larger vision of planning so that we don't continue to put in projects with signal lights only to find out later that a more effective way of moving traffic would be to install a roundabout or some different kind of scheme that hasn't really been seriously considered yet. So I would urge the board, if necessary, to take the extra time. Perhaps it is more prudent, again, to meet, discuss these in more detail and maybe have the Coastal Commission hearing be in December, because these are all important issues that really will affect the future of our area. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann Carey, followed by Susan Gretchell Wallace, followed by Joe Guntran.
Good morning, President Church and Honorable Board. Back in the beginning of the LCP process, at the community workshops, we were given a substantial amount of data, a lot of research. We studied the history and analysis on very specific issues, so that we could really understand and discuss and generate various policy proposals. And subsequently, when we got to the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors stage, we were able to deliberate our perspectives and come up with these resultant policies in your update. The Coastal Commission staff report proposes a new policy, a lot retirement program. And the proposed policy is 2 pages in length. I've read it numerous times, but I don't understand it, and I don't understand how it would be applied to the parcels on the Mid-Coast. As one example, the policy states that all land divisions shall include lot retirement or merger, but the policy is also a subsection of traffic mitigation, which provides an exception to single-family residential development. the policy does not appear to be clear as to what land division it applies to. So, for example, if a small builder desires to purchase a parcel to build a home, will he need to purchase another parcel to dedicate to open space, or will he be exempt from the lot retirement policy? As another example, the policy states that development rights be permanently extinguished on a number of existing legal lots equal to the number of lots to be developed, such that there's no net increase in residential development. So, for example, if a small builder owns a 10,000 square foot parcel in an area zoned for 5,000 square feet, and he desires to divide that parcel so that he has 2 standard lots on which to build a home, will he need to purchase 1 or 2 additional parcels to dedicate to open space? Under what circumstances a net increase considered, a proposed lot retirement program could be prohibitive for any builder to build? So could you please not suggest this lot retirement program till we have a public process to discuss it? Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Getchell-Wallace, followed by Joe Guntrin.
Good morning, President
Good morning.
Church and members of the board. My name is Susan Getchell-Wallace, and I'm on the San Mateo County Association of Realtors Board of Directors. I'm here today to express our association's support of Mr. Monowitz's analysis and recommendations made at the June 16th public hearing, particularly regarding a prohibition of wells and retaining the proposed growth limit of 75 units per year. Our specific comments and concerns were expressed in a letter previously submitted. We would like to resubmit that letter to be included as part of the record for today's hearing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And our final speaker today is Joe Guntrin.
Honorable Board Supervisors, good morning.
Good morning.
I just want to finish up what I didn't have an opportunity to finish in the June meeting. I have 2 comments. The annual limits on building permits at 75, this figure was intensely negotiated at local community hearings for over 7 years. And if the Coastal Commission does not understand this, then leave the building permit process at the count of 125. The other issue I wanted to discuss was the incentive to provide affordable housing and relocation of designated priority water use to sites should also extend to, if not extended to, C1 districts, mixed-use residential use sites. It has shown that the higher density mixed-use sites near public transportation has been successful in the county of San Mateo. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that concludes today's speakers. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Public hearing is closed, and that brings the matter back to the board. Comments, questions?
I have just
Supervisor Tissier?
maybe for clarification. One of them was just one of the last comments that was made on the lot retirement plan. If maybe we could get a clarification on that.
Good morning. The Coastal Commission staff has proposed a lot retirement program which essentially requires any proposed division of land to retire an equivalent number of lots. So in the hypothetical situation the previous speaker described, where a 10,000 square foot lot would be subdivided into 2 5,000 square foot lots, this proposed requirement would require that property owner to purchase 2 existing buildable lots within the Mid-Coast area, vacant lots, and then extinguish their development potential by recording legal documents on that lot. I hope that answers your question. Is there more that I can provide?
So you're basically saying for any lot that they're going to build on, they have to basically have another lot that they
Only if the development involves a subdivision. So building a house on an existing legal lot of record would not
so it's if
require.
you're subdividing.
That's correct.
I'm not, just for clarification, I think what it means, and Mr. Lester's here, and again, if you have a subdivision, say you're creating, you have 1 legal lot, and you're going to have a subdivision, and you're going to result in 5 legal lots, you'd have to find and retire 4. In other words,
it's the additional lots you're creating that I think you have to retire for.
That is
So if you had a lot split, you'd only have to find one lot to retire.
That's an
Is that it?
appropriate clarification.
Thank you. So the recommendation here from staff is to send a letter identifying the county's concerns as set forth in this report. I think I'd like to, rather than, we have an option. We can get a sense as to how the board feels about the recommendation in general, or we can go through everything item by item. But I think I'd like to start off by getting a sense from the board as to whether there is general agreement with the recommendation, and if not, then we can take up individual points. So any comments on that, Supervisor Gordon?
Yeah, in response to your statement, I'm in general supportive of what the staff has prepared for us. And I think it lays out issues that we've discussed here for some time. So I don't have a sense of a need to go through. I mean, I'm essentially prepared to adopt the staff recommendation with the letter to the commission. There are 2 or 3, maybe 5 or so issues that, if we were to do that, that I just want to personally highlight. So, if, and then I'd be prepared to come back and make a motion at some point about adopting the staff recommendation.
Okay. Other comments?
No, I actually agree with Rich. I think they've done a very thorough job in what they've done, and I know there's been some discussion about continued negotiation on some of the stickier points, if you will, and I don't have a problem with that happening, but I think what they're putting forth for us, I think has been very good and very well thought out.
Supervisor Jacobs-Gibson?
So that raises my concerns. How will we address some of the stickier issues that we still want to find some greater resolution to if we actually proceed with submitting it to the Coastal Commission for August? Yeah. That's the concern I have, because I do feel it's important for us to, I mean, it's not like it's a lot of them, but there are some very, some areas in which I feel there still needs to be more resolution on.
Well, why don't we take those up? And Supervisor Gordon, do you have
let me address the
procedural
thing and then on a couple of the points. Personally, I'm supportive of giving our staff the opportunity to continue to work with Coastal Commission staff. Mm-hmm. And there may be, and Dr. Lester referred to this, I suspect that of the some 63 modifications that were presented by the Commission staff, that there will be some that, in terms of our response to those, that we'll get to some agreement with the Commission staff. There may be some others where we'll never have agreement. And to clarify my understanding, and so, I think that the staff, our staff and Coastal Commission staff need to be given, the time that they feel they need. And if they can get this done by August, great. If they feel that they can't and they want to keep working, and that means a December hearing. We've been at this, a dozen years. We can wait a couple of months. But I would kind of leave that call up to the staff. I mean, if we can get to a place where we've resolved what we can resolve and the differences are the differences, I would suggest moving forward. Now, a procedural question to Mr. Murphy. So as I understand it, the commission, when they finally do hear this, will either accept what we've proposed or accept what the commission staff has proposed in terms of modifications, or they may make some other changes in the process. But what they then adopt comes back to us?
That's correct. Where we are, we're sort of at the preliminary stage where we have the opportunity to, as it were, to try and resolve some differences before the matter even goes to the commission. So when the commission acts, whatever they act on, whether it be in August or December or another date, it will come back to you as we either deny or we approve, as you've submitted, or more likely approve with modifications. At that point in time, whatever the commission does, your board will have the opportunity to act, and you can essentially either accept the Coastal Commission's proposal with modifications, or you can you can decide not to. And if you decide not to, at that point, the current LCP stays into effect, or stays in effect until such time as some other process comes along. So you do get the formal opportunity to act in the future on whatever the Coastal Commission does.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I guess, just to clarify, I mean, there are two ways to change a local coastal plan. One is this process, which is a full-blown revision, but there are also amendments that can be made, so that you could take, individual issues and present them to the commission for an amendment at some point of an existing plan.
That's correct, and I believe it's still that there's a limit on 3 amendments per year, but you can have any number of changes in each amendment package. So it's pretty flexible. It would not prevent, if this process didn't materialize in a way that everybody was comfortable, it wouldn't prevent starting right up again and coming back with something else.
Okay. Well,
Let me ask one question. After the Coastal Commission acts on our recommendation, and if they make changes to various provisions, when it comes back to us, we can accept some changes and reject others, or is it?
You either accept
in its entirety?
In their entirety as modified, or you reject.
I see.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And that's the point. Just to be clear, that if you were to reject because there was something that some elements of it you thought were onerous, you could then fairly quickly also submit an amendment package for things where there had been some agreement, and you wanted to do those things.
Correct. There is a process, and in itself it's time-consuming, so it wouldn't be automatic. There's certain notice requirements when you're starting an amendment package, but there would be nothing to preclude starting that process immediately again.
Well, with that clarification kind of the process, let me just share with my colleagues in the public of these issues, the ones that are important to me. As it relates to the growth rate, I'm willing to look at a lower number of units. I don't want to see a percent. I want to see a number. But I'm very concerned about the exclusion of second residences and affordable housing. We have a strong commitment in this county to inclusion of all folks in our community, and part of that has to do inclusion in housing, and to achieve that we have to have some affordable housing. So somehow that issue has to be addressed relative to whatever growth rate is established from my perspective. As it relates to the issue of the conflict resolution, I know the commission will never budge on that, and I'm not personally willing to fall on the sword for that one at the moment. There may be other days and other ways to deal with that. I'm hopeful that, and it sounds like there may be some possibility of getting some resolution on the issue of special districts, so that there's not just an outright prohibition, but there's an opportunity to look at some mergers, some other ways to deal with it based on the LAFCO report. I'm concerned about a little bit about the lot retirement program and what that might mean, and hopeful staff will work with the commission relative to that. I'm also In terms of the issue of an outright prohibition of wells and septic, some concerns about what that means to property owners. I've never been a fan of private wells on small lots or smaller lots in the mid-coast, and rather see people on public water. So whatever we do to help people get to public water, I think is important. I think that we had a presentation of the Environmental Quality Committee of the board last week on the Mid-Coast groundwater study. I'm starting to think that there may be 2 or 3 regions in particular, based on that preliminary study, where we might want to put a temporary moratorium where we'd look at, while we continue additional study, because we're going to move into a phase 3 study of the water. But the whole area and all at once, I'm not sure that makes sense at the moment. And I'd almost prefer to deal with that as a separate amendment at some future point than deal with it here in this update. And then finally, 2 comments about Devil Slide related issues. I appreciate what our staff has said in terms of the bypass lands. Caltrans owns those lands, and you're going to have to find some mechanism, for Caltrans to get its value back for the purchase of those lands. There are some underlying commitments. It's a very complicated set of real estate issues to deal with. To suggest that just be given to the county, I'm not sure how you accomplish that. So I think there needs to be some work there. And then also there's some language in one of the modifications regarding the abandoned Highway 1, and that will become a coastal trail. And I don't think that language is necessary at all in this LCP. It's dealt with in the coastal development permit for the tunnel. And I think that that's the better place for that language to be. And we are working under the terms of that coastal development permit to develop a management plan. The Coastal Commission staff suggests that the LCP require that we operate the trail 365 days a year. The management plan actually may need to look at closing the trail to protect sensitive habitat and endangered species at certain points during breeding season for a couple of different birds. We could end up with if the modification to operate the trail 365 days a year were accepted, it would be in conflict possibly with the management plan. And the management plan, where the study's gone, is a better place for those issues to be dealt with. So those are some of my top comments.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Gordon. Other comments? Supervisor Groom?
Thank you. I would like to talk about 2 issues. The first is affordable housing. I think that we cannot, this county has long history in affordable housing, as do most of the cities in this county. This county was the leader in developing HART, the Affordable Housing Land Trust. So I think that, and I would be willing to move the numbers around in order to make sure that some affordable housing units were included, and I would like to see those affordable housing units spread throughout the coast, not just necessarily in one site, so that there would be a lot of better opportunity. On the issue of wells and water, I think that recycled water is a necessity in today's times. I think that the study that we're doing on groundwater right now, we should have a stricter policy on wells. We can't, environmentally, that there are issues with wells, and we need to have a stricter policy to follow that. And the water, the use of recycling water, I think will help our agricultural community, which is an absolute essential part of not just San Mateo County, but of course the coast. So those are my comments, Mr. President Church.
Thank you. Other remarks? Supervisor Jacobs Gibson?
I just want to follow up on my total objection to the restrictions on affordable housing as well. That's one I think that I feel very strongly about, and I hope that there won't be any language in there restricting affordable housing, because quite frankly, we don't have enough anyway. I don't see it ever being a problem. So please, the last thing we need is to have a restriction on something that doesn't hardly get built. And I also support the idea of the recycled water. I think that that is something, I mean, I'm a real strong advocate for reclaimed and recycled water, and I think that we should do everything we can to make that happen as well. And so it shouldn't be any restrictions there either. And many of the other comments that Supervisor Gordon had raised was on my list as well, and I support your comments and as issues that we need to be sure that we continue to address.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Tissier?
Just a couple comments. When we talk about the number of units, I do realize that number that we have now has been negotiated in the past, and I think I would be more likely to keep that in, and that could potentially be something in the future that could be amended if we felt that that was too high. I'm assuming in the coming years, with the economy the way it is, we're probably not going to even get close to those numbers. But I also think it gives us an opportunity for the Coastal Commission to participate in the infrastructure planning as it relates to public services, the water planning. I mean, I think we have time to look at this as we also look at whether or not we actually get to those number of units. I would want to exclude, though, affordable housing and second units from that number, because I do think, again, over the 30 years, we haven't seen any of those housing units being built, even though we've talked about them and they've come forward. LAFCO at our last meeting also adopted or sent a letter about the special districts, as was mentioned by the Farm Bureau. I think it's important that we look at those as they come forward instead of looking at a total restriction. And I do think, considering we've worked so hard now to, as fresh as it gets, and all the other efforts we've made with agriculture, that we make sure that we look at opportunities, including recycled water, if that's applicable in the area of agriculture on our coast side, and not look to restrict it until we looked at something to be sure that if it is an alternative or any other technologies that are out there. As soon as we restrict it, we're also not looking at other opportunities technologically that we haven't even talked about. Times have changed considerably, and I think we can't limit ourselves to how we approach, whether it's the water districts or if it's with our transportation planning and all the other things that go with it, including the economy, have an effect on how we look at the LCP. And I think, we're assuming there's going to be this huge influx of development. I don't think that's going to happen, and we do have the opportunity, as Rich had mentioned, to make amendments if we don't feel that things are being planned appropriately, or we're getting to a point where we do feel like we're being overbuilt and the infrastructure's not handling it. So those are basically my comments, and I would also agree that what the staff has here, I would move forward. If there needs to be some discussion on some of these that, as Rich says, are sort of deal breakers, and we already know that, maybe we need to take a harder look at those. And also then have it come back to us from the Coastal Commission and get some feedback. And I would hope that most of what we've put here, or most if not all, we can resolve before it gets there, so that it doesn't come back that we have to say yay or nay and have to go through a lot of amendment processes, because there's been a lot of effort that's taken place here. So that would be my comment.
And I too am in general agreement with the staff recommendation, and I would encourage, as my colleagues have done, encourage staff to continue to work with the staff at the Coastal Commission to try to resolve as many issues as possible before the Commission's next meeting. As far as the growth rate is concerned, a lot of time and effort went into reaching this LCP and in particular the growth rate. We had 20 meetings. We received a lot of input from the community. We had, I thought, good buy-in from all segments of the community. And the Coastal Commission was involved right from the beginning, and I appreciate the many letters we received from them as the process unfolded. They provided input as well. But I feel that the 75 number is a fair number. It's a reasonable number. It's not to say I would not be open to looking at a slight change, but I'm not sure that I would want to change that by much. The affordable housing issue is an important priority for this county. This board has declared affordable housing as a priority. And we have an interest in encouraging affordable housing, and I think that it should be exempt from the growth rate. The other issues have been covered. The use of reclaimed water, I don't agree that that would be growth-inducing. If anything, we have to promote water conservation, and that's certainly one way to do that. Special districts, I'm not supportive of an outright prohibition. I think we need to maintain some flexibility. So I'm hoping that staff, the respective staffs can continue to work on that issue and perhaps reach some resolution. And I too have concerns about the retirement program proposal. The wells that have been discussed, that is the subject of a separate groundwater study here at the county, and I agree with the comments that have been made that that really should be probably a separate policy to be adopted at a later date by the county. We are very much in tune with the issue there, concerned about the issue, and I think we're taking reasonable steps to address that issue. So those are my remarks, and is there that would be appropriate to make a motion at this point?
I would move that we accept the staff report, that we authorize the Director of Community Development to send a letter to the Coastal Commission staff, including in that letter the preliminary recommendations that were made to us, the 21 separate items in the staff report, and authorize staff to continue to negotiate with the Coastal Commission staff. And I'll leave it there.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Supervisor Groom?
Aye.
Supervisor Gordon?
Aye.
Supervisor Jacobs Gibson?
Aye.
Supervisor Tissier?
Aye.
President Church?
Aye. Okay, thank you very much. And again, Mr. Lester, thank you for being here. And I want to thank everyone from the community for their comments and input. That concludes item number 7.